Hello YouTube and welcome back to World of Warships with Wadris yet again. And today I have a low tier video for you, something that I've been meaning to get to for a little while but just never quite get there because, well, lately I've been running my tier 10 battleships and cruisers trying to get some of the legendary module missions completed, and seeing as I am a dedicated co-op player, you can imagine that is rather time consuming. It is chewing up the vast majority of my time in game. But anyway, I'm starting off today with the Tier 3 American cruiser, the St. Louis. It has 29,500 hit points. She has a main battery of 14 152mm guns, which is a rather impressive spread if I do say so, and you can get 8 of those guns out on a full broadside. Depending on your angling, sometimes you can only get 4 or 5 of them, but, I mean, 8 guns to a broadside for a cruiser at Tier 3, that's a pretty phenomenal number. She does have a reasonable secondary armament as well, with 18 of the smaller caliber guns, but those are really not much to shake a stick at. Her AA defense is basically not even worth mentioning. Her maximum speed is 22 knots with a turning circle of 450 meters, which is nice and tight. She does have a reasonably quick rudder shift. And for concealment, she has 11 kilometers base detection range, 6.3 kilometers from the air, and pretty much standard smoke and assured detection. And as far as her main battery goes, they are decently powerful, 2100 HE shell damage and 3000 AP shell damage for penetrating hits. And, I mean, she definitely gets the job done when you put her to it. For my commander, I do have a 10-skill commander, courtesy of a couple of event missions that I completed. I have preventative maintenance, expert marksman, demolition expert, and inertia fuse high explosive. And, I mean, this is a pretty decent build for a Tier 3 ship, and it certainly wreaks all kinds of havoc. But I will take her into battle and let you see that for yourself. Now, the one thing that I do have to say that always drives me nuts when I start playing low-tier ships again is that they are almost insufferably slow. It's, yeah, 20 knots, trying to move anywhere. At least the bonus is that most of the maps tend to be fairly small on the lower tiers. Big Race, Islands, Fault Line even, Solomon Islands. They're relatively small maps you can get around relatively easily despite the slow speeds. But the simple fact of the matter is it still takes you a while to get anywhere. Even the larger maps where you have faster ships, at least you know you have a reasonably fast ship and you can get to and from places relatively quickly. But these smaller ships, these low-tier ships on the smaller maps, it just feels like they take forever to get anywhere. The only ones that really don't take forever are a lot of the destroyers, and that's only because they make a good 30 knots or so, as opposed to the 20 of the cruisers and battleships. Now, if there is definitely one target that the St. Louis at Tier 3 loves to shred, it's destroyers, simply because she has a lot of larger caliber guns, and the destroyers just kind of melt, if I do say so myself. Unfortunately, because this is a bot match, a couple of bots just cancel each other out. There is one that's going to be coming up on my side here that I am going to have a reasonable amount of time to deal with on my own. Of course, there's the French Tier 4, I believe it is, the Duguay-Trouin, which, yeah, it's a decent ship, definitely not something that I'm happy about running into in St. Louis, but I have a decent look at her broadside, and the AP shell damage on this ship is definitely, enough to give this ship a decent pounding and keep me alive as well. The only thing that I do have to worry about is the fact that the French ships, even at Tier 3, do have torpedoes, and I'm fairly sure one comes in and hits me somewhere along the way here. Yep, there they are right there. Oh, don't just take one. I don't just take one, I take two, which it hurts, but I'm not out of it quite yet. Of course, my anti-air batteries, for what little they're worth, are trying to open up on some of the fighters that have, or some of the aircraft and spotters that have been put up. And otherwise, just really just not doing much of anything in the long run. And of course, this is where the St. Louis's firepower really kind of comes in handy, is shooting at the big and sluggish battleships. Now, I do eat a fair bit of damage here, but one of the things that I've actually learned is a reasonable tactic in the St. Louis. One, because she has so many guns, and because of how they're positioned along her axis, is that unlike ships which have turreted weapons, this ship has casemate weapons, which they don't turn quite so well, but you don't have to worry about getting guns on one side to turn to be able to fire on the other. This ship can actually literally spin in circles and always have one gun somewhere on target. And it is easily one of the best defensive measures that I have found in this ship, is just if you get into a tight spot, she turns relatively quickly, she has a very tight turning radius, so just kick your rudder over hard and sit and spin in circles. And for the most part, you can generally get some decent damage and just kind of drive other players or even ships just absolutely bonkers trying to do anything to you, because your angle is constantly changing, your direction is constantly changing, and it's really difficult for even the bots to cope with. Other than that, it's basically just spam HE on anything that gets in range. AP is viable really only if you get a broadside target. And even then, at this tier, against battleships, while it certainly does a decent job, it's not phenomenal. It's better used against light cruisers, heavy cruisers. Otherwise, just kind of stick with HE and it'll pretty much sort itself out in the long run. I mean, you can see here that I do kind of open up a little bit with AP on this, I think that was a Nassau. No, Corbeil. But it was really just to finish it off, and because I knew that I had a decently flat broadside I was looking at. Otherwise, I pretty much would have just stuck with HE and kept going. For the match, I earned 40,390 credits, 547 experience points. I did 50,438 damage, which is pretty high for a Tier 3 game, to be perfectly fair. And, again, base experience, 230 experience points, which, again, it's a pretty high number, but I am running a high-skill captain, and I am a relatively experienced player, and I just kind of skipped down and did a minor bit of seal clubbing. Anyway, for the next little bit, oh yeah, slipping into the rest of everything, I did 18,500 damage to the Duguay-Trouin. I did for about the same amount, 15,000 to the Corbeil, 15,000 to the Nassau. I definitely spread my damage around a little bit. And I got 102 main battery hits, 83 from high explosive, and just kind of did all kinds of damage all around. For the match, my net earnings, so this is what actually shows up in my tally, is 38,365 credits, and my commander earned 565 experience points. And anyway, coming into the next portion of this video, I will be running in the Tier 4 US battleship, the Wyoming. And it's a very beautiful ship, if I do say so myself. Forgive me, I did kind of skip over and collect a resource container here. And, well, it did give me some decent coal rewards, I will say. Definitely not something you see very often from those. But anyway, coming back to the battleship, that is 43,800 hit points, and she does have a relatively decent armor profile for a low-tier battleship. Definitely nothing to sneeze at. Her main battery, she has 12 305mm guns, which do 4,200 HE shell damage and 8,300 AP shell damage, which is pretty reasonable, and her reload and rotation time is pretty much standard for battleships. And she doesn't exactly have a stellar secondary armament, but they are there. For her anti-air batteries, she's, I guess I could say she's kind of well protected for a Tier 4 battleship, but overall nothing that I would consider stellar. But she does kind of start the trend of AA-focused battleships. She has a maximum speed of 20.5 knots, which is, if I do say so, absolutely sluggish, and a 590-meter turning circle, which for a battleship is at least relatively tight. And of course, her detectability range is standard battleship, 13.6 kilometers, 19.7 kilometer air detect, and again, pretty much standard assured detection and smoke detection. Now, this is a 8-skill commander I'm running on this ship, who has expert loader, expert marksman, and I believe that was basics of survivability. Yes, basics of survivability. I have difficulty remembering what some of them are just from the icon. I certainly don't use all of them often enough to remember. But anyway, into battle we go. And I will say that I am reasonably happy with the Wyoming. Even when I was just starting the game, the Wyoming was reasonably powerful. And I will also say that she was the battleship that basically helped me fall in love with the American battleship line. Her guns aren't exactly the most accurate, but the simple fact that she has a lot of them and that they are powerful when they do hit definitely makes up for a lot of their shortcomings. And the other thing is that at Tier 4, she is the only battleship that actually has this heavy of a broadside. 12 guns to her broadside. That's not something that can be said of really any other ship until you get up to about the Fuso or a small handful of the premium ships. The only other one that really has a 12-gun broadside that I'm aware of, short of the Montana or a couple of the Tier 10 battleships, is the Tier 7 Lyon, and that is a 16-gun broadside, so I'm not entirely sure I should really count that one in this list. But, I mean, she is a phenomenal ship for Tier 4. The German battleships, the British battleships, they are passable at the tier, but they really just, they lack in the firepower aspect. And that's one of the things that I do enjoy about the Wyoming, is that while she may not exactly be the best, she is very far from being the worst, and I just love seeing that full broadside flying through the air towards targets. It just gives you the sense of power that a battleship should have, even at low tiers. When you only have a battleship that's got maybe 5, 6, 8 guns, it really just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel quite so much like a battleship, but rather more like a really heavy, sluggish cruiser. This was this is honestly the first battleship that, to me, well and truly felt like a battleship in-game. And it's kind of always stuck with me, and it will always have a sweet spot in my port. And as you can see, I'm just kind of shooting at long range. I do get some ricochets, I do get some hits, but I mean, she does relatively decent damage to the lighter cruisers, even at range, as long as the shells actually hit. And, I mean, she gets the job done. She is a very decent battleship. And she's also the battleship where I kind of started learning a few of my favorite co-op battle tactics of getting in close and just blasting the broadside at point-blank range of enemy battleships. Something that I excel at, to anybody who's watched a few of my previous videos. Lord knows I love doing that in the Missouri and Montana. It certainly makes a lot of the gameplay seem a little bit more worthwhile when you can get in and just basically nuke an enemy battleship at close range while their turrets are still kind of traversing. And this match did kind of get a little bit monotonous, I guess I could say, just because I wasn't really being shot at for some reason. I really don't know why. But, I mean, as you can see here, I did get a decent shot at the enemy ship. I only had 4 shells hit. I don't know what really happened there. But I did start turning in and trying to get an even better shot. Shells reloading. Again, this enemy battleship is focusing on the other player. It's like, you've got a battleship on this side. What are you shooting at? Ooh, that was a nice hit there. But, I mean, overall, and yeah, this right here is what gets me, and I actually have to shout out to this one a little bit. The St. Louis on my team, one is marked off as a TK, team killer, and that's really what kind of got me, is that these 2 battleships, the Orion and the enemy Wyoming, they're both going in a beeline for the TK AFK St. Louis on my team on this side of the map. Aside from a couple of salvos here and there, they really just don't give me the time of day. In the meantime, I'm basically just kind of wreaking all kinds of havoc, shooting at their broadsides, shooting at their backs, shooting at their main batteries. Eventually along the way here, I actually switch over to HE just because I don't have the angle to actually get any decently damaging shots into their broadsides, and I actually have to start relying a little bit on damage over time, because, in part because of the St. Louis being away and not doing anything, I'm the only player on my team who is left on this side of the map who can do anything to these 2 battleships. And this is part of where I actually say that I enjoy playing the Wyoming, because she is at least capable of handling these 2 ships as long as I keep her angled when shots are incoming and swing her out just enough to get rounds on target when my guns are loaded. And she does have the maneuverability to at least make that possible. But it's still just absolutely ridiculous the amount of attention that an AFK St. Louis is getting when there is an active player battleship right here in close proximity, just pumping shells into these 2 ships. And they aren't even ramming the St. Louis for, I swear, this is the luckiest AFK ship in the world at Tier 4. He doesn't even get rammed by these battleships, which is unusual, extremely unusual in co-op from bot ships. Usually they charge in and ram the first ship that they possibly can, but no, they're giving him a wide berth, they're trying to shoot at him, And he's just tanking all kinds of damage, sitting there AFK. Now, I will say that I did report this guy for being AFK, but even so, just the sheer amount of ludicrous in this little section here with this St. Louis, it's just insane. It's nuts. I do switch over to AP because I know that when I come out on the other side of this Orion, I'm going to have a beautiful shot at her broadside. And, well, at least for the most part, I had all but one gun on her. But beyond that, I'm pretty much just trying to finish it off before the rest of my teammates do. And unfortunately, the Carl Drew gets the kill before I do, but I definitely got the majority of the damage on it. I did my job. I did well. I did 83,000 damage in a Tier 4 battleship. Talk about insane. I earned 51,000 credits also for a Tier 4 match. 270 base experience points earned, 2 ship kills. And again, the St. Louis. Absolutely no input whatsoever. Even the secondaries on the St. Louis did absolutely nothing. Yeah, play poorly, AFK report. I think anybody who didn't see that coming was expecting me to be a far more forgiving player than I am. You can't sit there doing absolutely nothing for an entire match with clearly having your secondary batteries even turned off and not expect to be reported. Team score again, and yeah, 73,000 damage with my main battery, 16 with a high explosive, and 56,000 with the armor piercing. My second battery's gotten a good say as well. And for my actual credit earnings for the match, I earned 25,404 credits, and my commander earned 651 experience points. On that note, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I suppose I will catch you all with the next video I